Okay, well, welcome to day 3 of my little art challenge here for September. So I'm just trying to go every day, trying to make some art for an hour, giving myself some limitations on size and the materials that I've been using. So yeah, I'm glad to be back for the third straight day. Um, it took me. Uh, I'm just kind of trying to get settled in right now. Anyway, just appreciate you being here. Appreciate you tuning in. Um, yeah, like always, if you want to pop into the comments and say hi and let us know where you're tuning in from, that's always awesome to see. And I'll remind folks as we kind of move on. I feel a little bit out of sorts because I was just kind of getting everything set up a few minutes before I went live. But just trying to like think about like what I'm doing, what I'm making, and I mean I mentioned this before, but if you're new and you haven't tuned in before, I don't have a preset idea, and that's really how I work. So I work in a much more intuitive way, and I always encourage people to kind of try that. I think there's this misconception that artists always sort of like envision it exactly the way they want it, and then they sit down and they sort of take this picture that they have in their mind and put it down on the paper in front of them. But I feel like that's not always the case with art. I've often mentioned or said that it's kind of like there's two pieces of art being made, the one that's in your head and the piece that's actually in front of you. And at some point you have to kind of disengage the image that you have in your mind and really engage with the piece of paper or the piece that's in front of you. I try to do that straight from the start and just trying to work in a more intuitive kind of way. So if you're just kind of tuning in, if you want to pop on the comics and say hi, that would be great. Maybe let us know where you're tuning in from, and probably as we go throughout the stream today, that we'll probably have some more people tuning in. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and dive into the making. So remember, this is just totally open. I just invite people to join me and make art, make whatever they want, use whatever materials that they want. And as I go through this, I just sort of explain my thoughts, explain my decisions, explain kind of what's going on in my brain as I'm kind of making this. So you get to kind of see how I make my art and what thoughts are going through my head as I'm doing that. So anyway, let's go ahead and I'm going to dive in. So we'll fade over. So as usual, I'm going to be working on my 4-inch by 4-inch paper. This is just such a great size to work on because I've said it before, but I'll say it again, that if I mess up, then it's not like I don't feel super bad if it doesn't turn out all that great. I'm going to switch to my core watercolor paints. These are really nice paints. They're made by the company Golden, which is known for their high quality acrylic paints. And as usual, or not as usual, but as I often do, I'm going to start with using some watercolor paint, and I'm just kind of going with my gut. I'm trying to trust my gut and kind of think like, okay, I'm going to kind of grab that. So I'm going to just get some of this magenta here. Yesterday was kind of a blue-green day, and before that was kind of blue and purple, but I'm kind of feeling the pink today. And I think maybe this time I will try to cover up most of the white space. And I'm just kind of looking if I feel like my light's a little bright, so let me adjust my camera. Okay, so hopefully that's a little bit easier to see now. Alright, so go ahead and dry that off. Okay, so I think I'm going to mix it up a little bit. The other day I did several layers of watercolor, did some collage. I'm going to dive into my Inktense pencils. And got a color that's very much like what I use. It's called fuchsia, so it's a very magenta-like color. I think I'm going to use that. And I'm just been using a lot of squares and rectangles, so I think I'm going to do something a little bit different. Maybe just kind of draw some more organically shaped lines. And so I'm pressing pretty hard to get a lot of pigment down. And a little bit of water to kind of spread it around. I've used this kind of imagery before. Sometimes people compare it to kind of a tree-like image, but it's just some organic lines that kind of come together. Just trying to change things up, trying to do a little bit different each day, trying to push myself and not just always do the same thing over and over again, even though I'm using a lot of the same materials. Okay, try that a little bit. So I was just peeking at the comments, and we've got several people who have said hi and introduced themselves and stated where they're from. We got a whole, like a big international kind of feel today. We got somebody from the UK, somebody from the Netherlands, somebody from Virginia. So if you're just tuning in and you want to pop in and say hi in the comments, tell us where you're tuning in from. It's always nice to kind of see that. So basically with this, I always kind of think about how I'm building a background, but then also starting to build the structure of the piece. So just like before, I think I'm going to use, this is a darker, it's called Thistle. It's more of a violet, more of a purple color. I'm going to build in a few squares on this side. I think I feel like I need something over here too. Maybe a bigger rectangle. So just took another peek at the comments and saw somebody from Canada. So we definitely have a very international feel. Um, so I find it so amazing uh, how the internet can connect people from all over the world. And I appreciate you all tuning in for this. So I'm getting kind of a pink purpley kind of vibe from this. So I think I'm going to go in, get a little bit of purple paint. I think I'm going to do my splattering. Maybe I'll rinse that off. Maybe I'll do a little bit of that magenta as well and splatter it. I'll let that sort of set up for a moment or so, let some of that kind of dry in, and then I'm going to I want to do something with the dot so it's not just plain dots. So I used this yesterday, it's that plastic mesh, but I'm going to use it a little bit differently. Sometimes I have an actual like adhesive spreader that I use, but this just has a nice flat side to it, so I'm going to just take this, I'm going to drag it across those spots and just kind of just do something a little bit different, just to so it ends up kind of making little streaks and making some kind of bigger blobs out of some of those. No, I'm thinking I want some collage in there, but I'm not sure. I kind of pulled out some of this paper. It's just a page from an old book that was falling apart. That might be kind of interesting. I think what I want to do, I want to cut some strips. So this is where some people will get into that conversation about archival quality, and this paper is definitely not archival. I mean, that's what causes it to turn yellow. And I don't really care about archival quality. I know some people really get offended by that, but you know, like even in my journal, it's like it's going to last years and years and years, and I'm not going to worry about it. But if that's something that you are worried about, then I know some people will, you know, when they're using acrylics, they will seal it in the like acrylic medium. Yeah, I think I like that. So I like using this text, not so much for the text or the words, but it creates a visual texture. And that yellowed paper is a nice contrast to this pink and purple color scheme I have going on. I think if turn it over, maybe rub it from the back. So it looks like we had several people join us over the last few minutes. So feel free to pop into the comments if you have questions or comments, or if you want to introduce yourself or let us know where you're tuning in from. Okay. So I feel kind of bad because I worked to put those rectangles in, and now I've kind of covered them up. I think I'm going to pull them back out, maybe with a slightly darker color. Let's try my violet. Maybe I don't want it to be too dark though, so I think I'm going to try to shade a little bit lighter with it. So this does a couple things. The darker purple kind of reestablishes those rectangles that I had in there, kind of helps create that structure again. But then at the same time, it pushes the collage pieces into the background. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about as they're working, and the collage materials always seem to kind of float on top of everything. And it's one of the reasons why I like to use porous materials. I don't use a lot of magazines just because the slick, glossy nature of magazines makes it real hard to paint on top of unless you're using acrylics. I can draw. So yesterday I did one with a light bulb, and that was from a magazine. I was able to draw on top of it with my pens. But with the book paper, I'm just able to go right over top of it. And I didn't press super hard with the purple, so the purple's not very overpowering at this point. I'm trying to keep things fairly light. I want to kind of save the darkest values until later on in the composition. If I go too dark now, then it's hard to see what's underneath everything out, and I like those layers showing through. Okay, I'm really starting to like that. Let's go ahead and try it. So I think I want to switch to pen. Um, the last couple of days, I've done either photographs or magazine images. I think I want to have an image in this, but I want to draw it, and I'm thinking on this side here, most likely. I just kind of feel like there needs to be something over here, and I'm thinking like a face or a profile, and so the profile is kind of looking over this way. And I used to draw faces, like realistic faces and portraits, all the time as a younger artist, and I've gotten away from it, partly because I just don't have the patience for it anymore. And I just kind of feel like, why take all this time to draw something when I can easily use photos? But I do like to do simplified profiles and faces in my work. I like that. Make that a little stronger. So I want this profile to stand out a little bit more. So I think I'm going to use a Inktense pencil. Alright, got a cherry red. It's a nice dark red. Let me sharpen it. So I think our natural tendency is to color in the positive space, the positive shape. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to make the face red, but I really like working into the negative spaces. So I'm going to shade on this side. But I want to save these rectangles, so I don't want to go over those when I paint them. I might add a little bit of red to them. So just like I did over here with the purple, and it really makes these rectangles pop up, this little red is going to kind of create a shadow. It's going to kind of tint all this over here more red, and it's just going to make this seem to pop out more. Put a little bit of red around these squares and rectangles over here. So I hope my kind of incessant chatter as I'm making isn't too off-putting to folks. I just kind of feel like, okay, I'm on here for an hour, and yes, I'm just kind of wanting to make, but I just feel like, giving a little bit of insight into my working methods and processes. So anyway, but if you have any questions, any comments, again, always pop them into the comments there, and I'll take a look at them throughout the live stream and try to respond and answer to them. So I think compositionally, this is really kind of working out well. I've got the rectangles that bring some structure. I really like the face, the profile, and the space that it creates, and I like how I drew it. Um, and it cuts that paper in an interesting kind of way. The one thing is, though, it still isn't quite standing out as much as I'd like, so I think I want to make it a little bit darker, but this time I'm going to go into my paint and just use some more of that purple. I really like the transparent media, like the watercolor and the water soluble pencils. I love building up those layers, and where you can see the layers underneath kind of peeking through, even if you build up 3 or 4 or 5 different layers of different colors. And you can get that effect with acrylics as well, but you either have to thin them down a lot with water or with an acrylic medium. I have used a lot of the golden high flow, which is kind of like an ink, and they tend to be more transparent because they are thinner than regular acrylics. But I really like that transparency of it. And it allows me to work on paper. I mean, I can work on paper with acrylics, but it kind of reacts a little bit differently. And most often when we think about acrylics, we think about either canvas or panel or board. Okay, so there you go. That's really starting to pop that profile out. I'm going to use some ink. So I'm going to turn to my Faber-Castell pens. I'm not really sure. I have a magenta and I have this red, scarlet, deep scarlet red. I kind of think the scarlet red. So I have these lines that I drew in earlier, those kind of more organic ones, and a lot of them are kind of getting lost. So I think I want to bring some of those back out. But I don't think I want to do all of them, and I don't think I'm going to stick with what's there, but maybe for a few. And this ink is transparent too, so it's not like a paint pen that's going to be opaque on top and really show up. So over here on the darker side, maybe that's a little hard to see, but kind of like how subtle it is. think I want to bring these rectangles and squares out a little bit more too. So I'm just going to use that black pen. This black pen is going to echo the black line that I drew in for the profile, even if it kind of blends in with the darker purple paint. So if you haven't tuned in before, I've got these Faber-Castell Pit Artist pens in lots of different colors. And I like them because they are India ink and they are waterproof. They fade a little bit if you paint over them, but not too badly. I'm really liking how that's turning out, but I still don't think there's enough contrast between the profile and the background. So I think I'm going to turn to some of my colored pencils. Pull those over here. So I think I'm going to do a couple different things. The first thing I'm going to do is take some white. Now, white colored pencil, these are pretty high quality, but the white's not completely opaque, so I can use it in shade, and what I can do is just lighten up that edge there. And so I can just, it's very subtle, but it's just lightening it up a little bit and make it pop out a little bit more. I could also do this with some paint. So I have a set of Derwent Inktense paints that have white in them, and it can act in a very similar way. But I think the colored pencil will do the trick. And then I think I want to darken along that line. So there's a color here that I really like. Loganberry, which is a very dark kind of red violet color. Fits in well with the color scheme. So I'm looking at this, and I have a tendency to overdo things and get real, especially near the end. I get really caught up and nitpicky and have a tendency to overwork things. And I'm looking at this, and I really like how things are layered. I really like the composition, and so I think I'm getting to the point where I'm feeling like this is done. Couple think little things to do to finish it up. Like, first of all, I think I need to trim off these little bits on the side. Maybe touch up a few lines with the black pen. And one of the reasons I gave myself just an hour time limit was knowing my tendency to want to work something to death and keep adding and keep doing all kinds of stuff to it. So having just an hour really just kind of forces me not do that, to not overwork it. It's always good just to kind of step back and take a look, kind of see if there's anything else that needs to be added. There's probably more that I could do and more I could add to it, but I think I'm going to call it done. I'm going to go ahead and sign it. Traditionally, I sign it on the lower right-hand side. Some artists sign it on the left-hand side. Some artists sign it at the top. I like the signature not to be too obvious. Okay, so I think day 3 is done. So giving myself that hour time limit, kind of, if I get done a little early, that's quite all right. So anyway, yeah, so I think I'm kind of done with mine, but you all can kind of work as much as you want on your pieces. And so if you are making something along with me, I'd love to see it. So you can always pop it into the comments, take a photograph of it, and pop it in the comments. You can put it on social media. You can tag me, or figure out a way to kind of allow people to kind of see it. But I'd love to see kind of what you're working on, what you've been working on. And if you have any questions or comments, again, pop them into the comments. I'm more than happy to try to answer them or to respond to them. So just kind of take a look. So someone says that it's amazing that the simple elements give such a lovely composition, and I think that was stated back when I did those rectangles. It's one of the reasons I use simple shapes like squares and circles and rectangles, is that it does give a lot of structure, but then just throwing in that profile, I think, really bumped up the composition even more. So I really like how that turned out. So but yeah, we had quite a few people from all across the country and all across the world, so appreciate you tuning in. I'm doing this every day, except for maybe on weekends. That might be the only times that I don't live stream, but we'll have to see. Maybe I'll have a chance to do that. But during the weekdays, 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I'll be doing this for at least 30 days. So I appreciate you all tuning in and making some art with me. Like I said, if you've got questions or comments, put them in the comments. I always try to go back and respond to them later, even if it's just kind of writing the comments and such. But anyway, so if no one has any questions or any other comments, I'm going to sign off here in a few minutes. But hopefully you've enjoyed it. Oh, and I'm uploading these to the videos uploading them to YouTube, and they're also going to stay here on my Facebook page. And then I did it for the first one. I made a time-lapse video, so you can kind of see the whole thing kind of unfold in like a minute and a half. And I started one for yesterday's, and I'll probably do one. It's kind of a nice contrast from the hour-long video to the like minute and a half. So kind of be on the lookout for those. I'll share the time lapse on YouTube and on Facebook here. So anyway, well, I'm gonna sign off, and so I hope you all enjoyed it. Hope that you're finding some kind of inspiration from this, or motivation, or anything like that. So Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off, so I will catch you guys tomorrow, same time. So, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.